Hey there, my sweet friends. It's Eva, your old pal from Eufaula, Alabama, sitting here at 65 with a glass of sweet tea and a heart full of tales. Picture me on my front porch, the lake breeze whispering through the dogwoods. Lake Eufaula shining soft as the sun dips low. I've lived long enough to know joy and pain. And tonight, I've got a story that's been simmering like my mama's cornbread on a Sunday stove. It's about giving your all and feeling it ain't enough. About finding your light when the world tries to dim it. If you've ever loved so deep it left you aching, or found strength you didn't know you had, this one's for you. So, grab a quilt, settle in, and let's talk, just us, about a journey from the heartbreak to healing. It was a cool November evening in Austin, the kind where the air carries a hint of cedar and the crickets hum soft under a big old Texas sky. I was in my daughter Amanda's kitchen, my hands still warm from the chicken pot pie I'd baked that afternoon. The table was set with my mama's bluebell patterned plates, the ones I'd brought over when I moved into their little apartment in East Austin. The scent of thyme and butter mingled with the faint twang of Patty Loveless's "How Can I Help You Say Goodbye" drifting from a radio on the counter. I'd spent the day tidying up, folding laundry and wiping down counters, hoping to ease the load for Amanda and her husband, Chad. They'd invited me to stay after I sold our family home in Cedar Park, a place too full of my late husband Tom's laughter to bear alone. But that night, I wasn't supposed to be at their dinner table, not really. The living room was cozy, with string lights draped over an IKEA couch. A Shiner Bock bottle sweating on the coffee table. Amanda was scrolling through her phone, her hair in a messy bun, barely looking up. Chad was sprawled in his chair, sipping his beer, his eyes glued to the TV blaring a Longhorns game. I was clearing dishes, my apron tied loose, when Chad's voice cut through the quiet like a knife through warm cornbread. You know, Margaret. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending this is temporary," he said, his tone flat but edged with something mean. "We ain't running a charity here." I froze, a plate slipping in my hands, the clink of it hitting the sink loud in the sudden stillness. Amanda's fingers paused on her phone, but her eyes stayed down. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking like a leaf in a hill country storm. He leaned back, smirking, his beer bottle dangling from his fingers. "I mean, how long's this gonna drag on? You're not working, not pitching in, we've got bills." "Margaret, we didn't sign up for an extra mouth to feed." My breath caught, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The words stung deeper than a wasp, each one a jab at the love I'd poured into this family. I turned to Amanda, my girl, the one I'd rocked through nightmares, the one I'd saved every penny for her college books. Her lips were pressed tight, her eyes fixed on her screen. "Amanda," I said, my voice a plea, waiting for her to look up, to say something, anything. She mumbled, so soft I barely heard. "Maybe it's best, Mom, if you find something more stable for everyone's sake." The room spun, the radio's twang fading to a hum. It was like the ground vanished, leaving me falling through a darkness I couldn't name. I set the plate down, slow and careful, my hands trembling. "I see," I said, my voice steady, though my soul was crumbling like cornbread left out too long. I untied my apron, folded it neat on the counter, and walked to my room. Their silence chasing me like a cold wind. Not one word, not from Amanda, not from my own flesh and blood, followed me. I closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the beige wall, a color I'd never picked. And I knew, in that moment, something had to change. Video 29. Let me take you back a bit, to how I ended up in that kitchen, in a home that was theirs but never mine. If you'll stay with me, You'll see how a single night's hurt can spark a journey to find starlight after the darkest storm. I'm Margaret Louise Walker, born and raised right here in Austin, where the live oaks stretch wide and the Colorado River winds like a song through the city. I wasn't always the woman sitting on this porch, nursing tea and a tale. Back in the day, I was a librarian, shelving books at the Austin Public Library and dreaming of opening a little flower shop, selling bluebonnets and sunflowers at the farmers market on South Congress. But life had other plans. My husband, Tom, passed last year, leaving me with a heart full of grief and a house in Cedar Park too big for one. I sold it. The memories of his laughter in every room too heavy to carry. Amanda, my only child, offered me a place to stay, or so I thought. "Come live with us, Mom," she'd said, her voice soft over the phone. Chad, her husband, didn't say much, just nodded when I arrived with my suitcases. I tried to make myself small, to fit into their world without stirring the pot. I moved into a back room, barely bigger than a closet, with a twin bed and a window facing a brick wall. I cooked suppers, chicken pot pie, meatloaf, peach cobbler, hoping to bring a bit of home to their apartment. I folded their laundry, scrubbed their floors, ran errands to H-E-B for milk and bread. I thought I was helping, thought I was needed, but Chad had a way of making me feel like a burr in his boot. He'd roll his eyes when I asked about his day, switch the TV when I was watching Antiques Roadshow, mutter things like freeloader under his breath as he passed me in the hall. I'd tell myself I misheard, that he was just stressed. Like Amanda said, "Work's rough, Mom." She'd mumble, her eyes avoiding mine. "He don't mean it." But I felt it, every jab, every sigh. I'd look to Amanda, waiting for her to stand up for me, to say, "That's my mama, Chad, show some respect." But she stayed quiet, her phone a shield between us. I swallowed the shame, kept cooking, kept cleaning, thinking that's what mothers do, hold things together, even when they're falling apart. I thought of my mama, Eleanor, standing in her kitchen back in the 70s, her apron dusted with flour as she baked cornbread for Sunday supper. "Margaret Louise," she'd say, "you can't make folks love you by giving till you're empty. You gotta keep some light for you." I didn't understand her then, young and full of dreams for my little family with Tom. But as I stood in that apartment, clearing dishes for folks who saw me as a burden, her words came back, sharp as a star in the night sky. The weeks before that dinner had been a slow unraveling. Chad's irritation grew, like a weed taking over a garden. He'd complain about the grocery bill if I bought extra eggs. Though I paid for 'em myself, he'd leave my note suppers in the fridge, all crumpled on the counter. Amanda was no better, rushing off to her marketing job or meeting friends at Joe's Coffee, leaving me with a sink full of dishes and a heart full of questions. I'd ask, "How's work, sweetie?" and she'd say, "Fine, Mom." Her voice clipped, like I was a neighbor she didn't know well. I kept trying, kept believing I could knit us back into something whole, but every day, I felt like I was fading, my light dimming in their shadow. I remember 1980 when Amanda was 5, and she'd curl up with me on the porch swing, her little hands clutching a book I'd read from the library. I'd work late shelving books, saving for her bike, her school trips, her dreams. I never minded the ache in my bones, 'cause her smile was brighter than the Austin skyline. Now, sitting in that spare room after Chad's words, I wondered where that girl had gone. How my daughter had become a stranger who'd let me be cast aside. I didn't sleep that night. I packed my things 2 suitcases, a lifetime and a few shirts and photos, and sat on the bed, the motel's neon sign buzzing outside my mind. I thought of 1990 when I'd worked double shifts to pay Amanda's college tuition. My hands sore but my heart proud. I thought of the nights I'd cried alone in our Cedar Park house, missing Tom, waiting for Amanda to call. And I thought of myself, Margaret Louise, who'd once dreamed of a flower shop, of a life that was more than dishes and dust. Something stirred in me, not rage, but a spark, like the first star blinking over Zilker Park, faint but growing. I left at dawn, slipping out before they woke. I didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note. I walked to my car, the Austin chill biting through my cardigan, and drove to a motel off I-35, its sign flickering like a bad memory. I checked in, the clerk barely looking up, and sat on a lumpy bed, staring at a pile of wallpaper. I sent Amanda a text, I understand. I love you always. No reply came, not then, not in the days that followed. I sat there, the hum of the motel's vending machine outside my door, and felt like a star snuffed out. My light gone dark, but even in the darkest night, there's a star waiting to shine. I didn't know it yet, but that moment sitting in a motel with 2 suitcases and a broken heart was the start of finding it. A secret, hidden in my mama's diary, was about to change everything. This story ain't just about hurt, y'all. It's about rising from the ashes, about learning to shine when the world tries to dim you. If it's speaking to your soul, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Share a time you felt unseen, or when you found your spark. Your story matters, and I'm here on this old porch, listening. That November evening in Amanda's kitchen, when Chad called me an extra mouth to feed, and my own daughter stayed silent, left a hurt that didn't show but cut deep, like a shadow stretching long across the Austin skyline. I'm Margaret Louise Walker, just a woman from Austin, Texas, who thought love could mend any rift, but love, I was learning, can't heal a heart that's been turned away. I left their apartment with 2 suitcases and a chest full of ache, driving into the night to a motel that smelled of lost hopes. Sitting here now, sipping chamomile tea on my porch, the live oaks swaying soft in the breeze. I want to take you all back to those dark days, when the stars seemed gone, and a single book, my mama's diary, lit a spark I didn't know I had. The motel was off I-35, a worn-out place with a neon sign flickering like a firefly. Firefly in its last glow. I pulled into the lot at dawn, the sky a bruised grey over Austin, and checked in with a clerk who barely glanced up from his phone, his voice flat as the cracked linoleum floor. "Room 12, $30 a night," he muttered, sliding a key across the counter. I dragged my suitcases up a rusted staircase, the air thick with stale smoke and the faint tang of spilled beer. The room was small, its wallpaper peeling like old bark, the bed sagging under a thin blanket that reeked of cheap bleach. A single window faced a parking lot, where trucks roared past, their headlights slicing through the dark like blades. I set my bags down, sat on the bed's edge, and stared at the grey wall, its dullness swallowing the last flickers of my light. I didn't cry right away. My heart was too heavy, like a stone sunk deep in the Colorado River. I'd sent Amanda that text, I understand. I love you always, and sat there, phone in hand, waiting for a reply, a word, anything to say I wasn't alone. But the screen stayed dark, silent as the Austin night outside. I thought of the years I'd given her, the nights I'd worked late at the Austin Public Library, shelving books to pay for her ballet shoes, her college textbooks, her dreams. I'd skip suppers so she could have seconds. My hopes of opening a flower shop tucked away like bluebonnets waiting for spring. And now, here I was, erased. My love tossed aside like a note crumpled on her counter. The days dragged on, each one a grey blur, like fog over Barton Springs. I'd wake to the buzz of the motel's vending machine outside my door, its hum a cruel reminder of where I'd landed. I'd brew coffee in a cheap plastic pot, the taste thin and bitter, and sit by the window, watching strangers pass truckers with tired eyes, drifters with nowhere to go. Folks like me with nothing but time and hurt. I tried to keep moving, to claw my way out of the dark. I walked to a strip mall down I-35, applying for jobs at HEB, Kirby Lane Cafe, even a gas station with a flickering Shell sign. But every manager shook their head. Their words polite but sharp. Overqualified, one said, her eyes skipping over my greying hair. Not a good fit, said another. A soft way of saying, I was too old, too worn, my grief a weight they didn't want in their store. I sent Amanda another text, a week later, my fingers shaking over the keys. I'm okay, sweetie. Just want to know how you're holding up. No reply. I tried again. A heart emoji, small and hopeful, thinking it might slip through her silence. Nothing. I told myself she was busy, that Chad was keeping her from me, that she'd come around. But as the weeks stretched into a month, that hope withered like bluebonnets in a July drought. The loneliness was a tide, pulling me under till I could barely breathe. I'd lie awake, the motel's neon sign casting a pink haze through the curtains, and wonder what I'd done to lose her. How my girl had become a stranger who'd let me be cast out. I thought of my mama, Eleanor, in her kitchen back in the 70s, her hands kneading dough for cornbread, her voice soft as a summer breeze. Margaret Louise, she'd say, you're enough, just as you are. I'd believed her then, young and full of dreams for Amanda and my husband, Tom. But now, in this room with its cracked mirror and lumpy bed, I felt like I'd failed her, failed myself. I'd given everything, my time, my savings, my heart, and it had left me here, with nothing but 2 suitcases and a silence that rang louder than any words. The motel wasn't just a place, it was a mirror, showing me the woman I'd become tired, small, a shadow of the librarian who'd once dreamed of a flower shop selling sunflowers at the Republic Square Market. I'd walk to a corner store for bread and milk, avoiding my reflection in the glass doors, afraid to see the lines etched deeper in my face. I'd pass folks on the sidewalk, college kids laughing, couples holding hands and feel like a ghost, unseen, unheard. I'd hum Amazing Grace, a habit from Mama's kitchen, but the melody felt hollow, like a song I'd forgotten the words to. I tried to keep some kind of rhythm, to hold on to the pieces of me that remained. I'd wash my clothes in the motel's coin laundry, the dryers rumble a steady drone as I folded faded blouses and socks worn thin. I'd buy a newspaper from the lobby, skimming ads for jobs I knew I wouldn't get, my hands leaving smudges on the newsprint. I'd sit in the parking lot some nights, under a sky too bright with city lights to show many stars, and pray for strength, for a sign, for anything to pull me from this dark. One evening, as the Austin sky turned a deep indigo, I sat on the floor, sorting through the only box I'd brought from our Cedar Park house, a cardboard keepsake of a life I'd left behind. There were photos Tom and Amanda splashing at Barton Springs, her grin wide as a summer day, me and Tom dancing at a Zilker Park barbecue, his hand warm in mine, his laugh like a song, a few letters, an old library card, and then tucked at the bottom, a small leather-bound book, its spine soft from years of touch, my mama's diary. I didn't recall packing it, but its weight felt like a whisper, like a star blinking through the clouds. I lit a candle, its flame dancing in the dim room, and opened the first page. Her handwriting looped and neat, like the notes she'd slip into my lunchbox when I was a girl. At first, it was simple weather, church, gripes about gas prices at the Exxon on South Congress. She'd write about the heat, the way it clung to her skin, or the price of eggs rising at HEB. But then, I turned to an entry dated June 1967, and my breath caught like a hook in my throat. He came again today, she wrote, said he wished things were different, wished I could be his wife, but he's got a family, a business, a name to protect. Margaret will never know. She must never know. I read it twice, then again, my hands shaking like leaves in a hill country wind. Margaret will never know. Me. She was talking about me. I flipped further, each page a piece of a secret she'd carried to her grave. Whispers of meetings at motels off I-35, small cash payments she tried to refuse but needed to keep us fed, a man she never named fully, only initials, HJS. Then, an entry from February. 68. He said he'd made arrangements, that if anything happened to him, Margaret would have something, a part of what he built. It won't be official, too dangerous, but his lawyer, Mr. Goldstein, will know. I stopped, the candle's light flickering on the wall, my heart racing like a drum. Goldstein. I'd seen that name before, years ago, in a dusty file when I'd sorted Mama's things after her passing. It was like a star flaring bright in the dark, a truth I'd never known I was searching for. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed, the diary open in my lap, reading and rereading till the words blurred into the candle's glow. My mama, Eleanor, had loved a man she couldn't claim, a man whose name echoed in Austin's oil fields. And me, I was their daughter, hidden away, a secret she'd guarded with every breath. But she'd left me something, not just her love, but a promise, a truth that could shift the ground beneath me. I thought of 1980, when Amanda was 5, and Mama would sit with us on the porch swing in Cedar Park, her eyes far off, like she was holding a weight I couldn't see. I'd thought it was grief for my daddy, but now I saw it was for him, for HJS, for the life she'd never lived. The next morning, I drove to the Austin Public Library on Spicewood Springs, the only place I could think to start. I sat at a computer, my hands clumsy on the keys, searching for Leonard Goldstein, Dallas, lawyer. It took hours, sifting through old directories and firm listings, but I found him a retired estate attorney, still tied to a private practice in Dallas. I didn't call, not yet. My heart was too full, my hands too unsteady. Instead, I bought a notepad at the HEB next door and wrote a letter, my cursive, careful on the motel's cheap stationery. I told him who I was, who Mama was, and begged for a chance to talk, to know if her words held truth. I mailed it from a post office on Airport Boulevard, my fingers lingering on the mailbox, like I was sending a prayer to the stars. 2 weeks later, the motel phone rang, sharp in the quiet. I picked it up, my voice a whisper. Margaret, a man said, his tone old but gentle. This is Leonard Goldstein. I knew your mama, Eleanor. There's something you need to see. I sat on the bed, the receiver cold against my ear, and felt that spark flare into a flame, like a star bursting bright over the Austin skyline. I didn't know what waited in Dallas, but as I looked out at the city's lights, faint through the motel's grimy window, I knew I was more than Amanda's mama, more than Chad's burden. I was Margaret Louise, and I was about to uncover a truth that could light my way. The night was long, but a star was rising, and I was ready to follow its glow. Some truths come quiet, like a star blinking to life in the Austin night, so soft you might miss it if you're not looking. That's how it was for me. Finding my mama's diary in that rundown motel, learning I was the daughter of a man I'd never known, with a promise waiting to change everything. I'm Margaret Louise Walker, just a woman from Austin, Texas, who'd been cast out by my own daughter Amanda and her husband Chad, left to piece myself together in a room that smelled of despair. But that diary, with its secrets of love and legacy, lit a spark I hadn't felt in years. I'm sitting here now, chamomile tea in hand, the live oak swaying outside my porch, and I want to take y'all back to the moment I claimed a truth that turned my darkness into starlight, setting me on a path to stand tall again. It was early December now, the Austin air crisp, the live oaks along South Congress draped with Christmas lights that twinkled like fireflies. I'd been living in that motel off I-35 for a month, its neon sign buzzing like a heartbeat in the night. The diary's words, my mama's love for a man called HJS, her hope for me had kept me awake. A flame burning steady in my chest, I'd mailed a letter to Leonard Goldstein, a Dallas lawyer tied to Mama's secret, and when his call came, saying he had something for me, it was like a star flaring bright, calling me north. I took a Greyhound to Dallas the next morning, my suitcase half packed, my heart half hoping. The bus rumbled through the flat Texas plains, past billboards for Whataburger and Book Keys, the sky a pale blue streaked with clouds. I clutched Mama's diary, its leather worn soft, and thought of 1980, when I'd sit with Amanda on our Cedar Park porch, her little hands holding a library book, her laughter brighter than the Zilker Park lights. I'd given her everything, my time, my savings, my dreams of a flower shop only to be called a burden, left to fend for myself. But now, with Goldstein's call echoing in my mind, I felt a shift, like a seed breaking through winter soil, ready to grow. The law office in Dallas was tucked in a quiet building, its walls lined with old books that smelled of dust and time. Leonard Goldstein met me at the door, a man in his 70s with silver hair and eyes that held a story of their own. "Margaret," he said, his voice warm but heavy. "I always wondered if you'd come." He led me to a leather chair, the room lit soft by a lamp, and handed me a sealed envelope, yellowed and fragile, its edges curled like petals. "This is from Harold James Sterling," he said, "your father." My breath caught, the name landing like a stone in the Colorado River, rippling out. Harold James Sterling, a name I'd seen in old Austin papers, a titan of Central Texas oil, a man with a family, a legacy, a life Mama could never share. I opened the envelope, my hand shaking, and unfolded a letter, his handwriting bold but careful. "To my daughter, Margaret Louise." It began, "I was a coward in life, loving your mother in secret, leaving you to carry my silence. But I claim you now, in death, with what I can give." He wrote of his regret, his love for Mama, and a promise, a portion of his wealth, untraceable through his estate, held for me by Goldstein. I stopped, tears blurring the ink, my heart pounding like a drum. Goldstein slid a folder across the table, its pages crisp with numbers and titles, bank accounts, an investment portfolio, a modest trust over $1 million, all mine. I stared at the figures, then at him, my voice a whisper. "This is real, all of it." He nodded, his eyes kind. "It's yours, Margaret. Always was. Your mother. Eleanor was a fine woman. She never asked for this, but Harold insisted." I sat there, the letter in my hands, feeling like a star had burst inside me, not just for the money, but for the truth I was seen, chosen, loved, even in secret. I thought of Mama, slipping notes in my lunchbox, her eyes holding a weight I'd never understood. She'd fought for me, silent and steady, leaving me this gift when I needed it most. I didn't laugh or cry, I just held the letter, letting the truth wash over me like a warm rain on Barton Springs. I stayed in Dallas a few days, walking quiet streets, sipping coffee at a diner where the waitress called me Hun. I wasn't ready to go back to Austin, not yet. The motel, Amanda's silence, Chad's smirk, they were still too raw, like a cut not yet scabbed over. Goldstein gave me time, answering my questions about the trust, the legal steps to claim it. "Take it slow," he said, his hand on my shoulder. "You've got a lot to carry now. When I returned to Austin, I didn't go back to the motel. I rented a small apartment off South Congress, a clean place with a balcony overlooking the city's skyline, its lights like stars scattered across the night. It was a world away from Amanda and Chad's apartment, a place they'd never dream I could afford. I started dressing different simple blouses, a touch of lipstick, not flashy, but sure, like a woman who knew her worth. I bought a laptop from Best Buy, watching YouTube videos on investing, real estate, contracts. I wasn't building an empire, I was building a shield, a way to never be powerless again. One night, scrolling through a real estate auction site, I found a listing for a 6-unit apartment building in East Austin, run down but solid, the exact complex where Amanda and Chad lived. My heart skipped, like a star pulsing in the sky. The owner had defaulted on taxes, and the auction was set for 2 weeks out. I sat there, staring at the screen, seeing Chad's smirk, Amanda's downcast eyes. I wasn't planning revenge, not exactly, but I wanted control, a way to stand where they'd pushed me down. I called Goldstein the next morning, my voice steady. "Can we buy a building?" I asked. "Without my name showing?" He chuckled, soft and knowing. "We can do that, Margaret. I'll set up an LLC, keep it anonymous. What's the property?" I told him, and he didn't ask why. Just said, "Give me a week," true to his word. He filed the paperwork, creating ML Holdings, Margaret Louise. My initials, my claim. I transferred the funds, my hand steady on the laptop, and placed the bid higher than I needed, to be sure. The auction came and went, quiet as a prayer, and I won. The deed mine, legal and clean. Just like that. I owned the building where Amanda and Chad lived, where they'd called me a burden, where they'd shut the door on me like I was nothing. I remember sitting at my new kitchen table, the deed in my hands, the city lights sparkling outside. I whispered to myself, let's see how Chad likes paying rent to the woman he threw out. It wasn't about money, it was about pride, about showing them I was more than their cast-off. I thought of 1990 when I'd worked late to buy Amanda a prom dress. My fingers sore, but my heart full. She'd twirled in that dress, her smile bright as the Austin skyline. Now she'd let Chad dim me. But I was rising, a star they couldn't ignore. I didn't act right away. I waited, letting the deed sit like a seed in the ground, gathering strength. Goldstein sent a property manager to assess the building leaky pipes, cracked tiles, a lobby that smelled of mildew. I approved repairs, small ones at first, planning to adjust the rent to market rates, a move that had hit Chad and Amanda hardest. I wasn't cruel, didn't single them out, but I knew their budget, knew they'd feel the pinch. I'd seen Chad's Shiner Bock bottles, Amanda's Starbucks cups, their life stretched thin by pride. One evening, I drove by their building, parking across the street under a live oak. Their apartment's lights were on, shadows moving behind the curtains. I pictured Chad, sprawled on the couch, Amanda scrolling her phone, living in a world they thought was theirs. I didn't hate him, not really. I just wanted them to see me, to feel the weight of what they'd done. I thought of 2000 when Amanda graduated college, and I'd given her my old car, my hands shaking as I handed her the keys. She'd hugged me then, calling me her best mom. Now, I was a stranger, but not for long. I went home. The city's lights a constellation outside my balcony. I opened Mama's diary. Reading her words again, Margaret will never know. But I did know, and with that truth came a power I was just starting to wield. I wasn't just Amanda's mama, not just Chad's nuisance. I was Margaret Louise, daughter of Eleanor and Harold, and I was claiming my place, not with shouts, but with the quiet strength of a star rising over Austin, bright and unyielding, ready to shine. Sometimes, healing sneaks up on you, soft as a breeze through the live oaks, like a star you didn't see till the clouds parted. I'm Margaret Louise Walker, just a woman from Austin, Texas, who'd been broken by my own daughter Amanda and her husband Chad, only to find a spark in my mama's diary that lit a new path. I'd claimed a truth in Dallas, a legacy from a father I'd never known, and used it to buy the building where Amanda and Chad lived, a quiet reclaiming of my worth. But power ain't enough without peace, and that's what I was searching for now, sitting here with my chamomile tea, the Zilker Park lights twinkling like fireflies. I want to take you all back to those days when I learned to grow again, not just for others, but for me, tending my heart like a garden after a long, dark winter. It was late December now, the Austin air cool, the streets alive with holiday cheer, Christmas lights strung across South Congress, carolers singing Silent Night outside Joe's Coffee. I'd left the motel's shadows behind, settling into a small apartment off South Congress, a clean space with a balcony overlooking the city's skyline, its glow a constellation of hope. I'd bought the 6-unit building where Amanda and Chad lived, my name hidden behind ML Holdings, and approved repairs new pipes, fresh paint knowing the rent would soon adjust to market rates, a move that'd pinch them hard. But I wasn't ready to face them, not yet. I needed to find myself first, to root my heart in something steady. I started small, like planting a seed in spring soil. I dusted the apartment, hanging curtains I'd sewn from a bolt of blue gingham, their pattern cheerful as a summer day. I bought a potted rosemary from the farmer's market on Republic Square. Its scent filling the kitchen like a memory of Mama's cornbread days. I'd wake early, brew community coffee in a new pot, and sit on the balcony, watching the city stir joggers in Zilker Park, baristas opening cafes, Austin humming with life. The loneliness still lingered, like a shadow at dusk, but it was softer now, less like a weight and more like a quiet companion. I needed more than my apartment to heal, though I'd spent too long living for Amanda, for Chad's grudging tolerance, letting their world define mine. So I looked for something to call my own, a place to belong. I found it at the Zilker Botanical Garden, where a flyer taped to a community board advertised a gardening club. The first meeting was on a chilly Tuesday morning. The garden's paths lined with winter roses, their petals bright against the frost. I walked in with a pair of gloves and a nervous heart, feeling like a schoolgirl again. A woman with silver curls and a warm smile waved me over. "You must be Margaret," she said, patting a bench. "I'm Ruth. Come dig in the dirt with us." We planted and talked, our hands dusty with soil, our stories spilling out like seeds. Ruth, a retired teacher who'd lost her son to a car accident, told me about her herb garden, how basil and thyme kept her grounded. Another woman, Clara, showed me how to prune lavender, her fingers steady despite arthritis. I shared a piece of my heart, not the whole tale, just enough. I've been given till I'm empty. I said, trowel in hand, and now I'm learning to grow something for me. Ruth nodded, her eyes kind as a summer dawn. "You're a rose, Margaret, bloomin' where you're planted, don't you forget it." Her words settled in me, soft as petals on the river, and I carried 'em home, feeling lighter than I had in months. I started going to the gardening club every week, planting marigolds, tending succulents, laughing with women who saw me, not my past. I bought a few pots for my balcony daisies, sage, a small tomato plant, and watched them grow. Their green a quiet promise. I opened an Etsy shop, Margaret's Bloom, selling dried flower bouquets and herb sachets, my hands steady as I tied ribbons. Orders came slow, a lavender bundle for a gal in Houston, a daisy wreath for a church in San Antonio, but each one felt like a stitch in a quilt, mending the holes in my soul. I didn't forget Amanda or Chad, though their world was drifting further from mine. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't want to stir, the hurt still raw in my chest. But Austin's a city where secrets don't stay buried long, and whispers found me. One day, at the H-E-B on East 7th, I saw Amanda in the cereal aisle, her cart holding off-brand boxes and canned soup. No sign of the Starbucks cups she used to carry. She looked tired, her hair pulled back, her eyes scanning prices like they were a puzzle she couldn't solve. I stayed behind a display of tortilla chips, my heart aching but still. I remembered 1985 when she'd cling to me after a bad dream. Her small voice saying, "You're my best mama." Now, she was a stranger, carrying a weight I couldn't lift for her. I heard more through the property manager I'd hired for ML Holdings. Chad was grumbling about the building repairs, new lights in the hall, a fixed elevator saying they were a hassle, not a help. He didn't know I was behind him, didn't know the rent was about to climb. A market adjustment that had hit their thin budget like a stone through glass. I'd told the manager to send out notices soon, keeping my name out of it. It wasn't cruelty, not really. It was a reckoning, a way to make him feel the ground shift, like I had that night in their kitchen. One afternoon, I drove by their building, parking under a pecan tree across the street. Their apartment's lights were on, curtains half drawn, shadows moving inside. I pictured Chad, sprawled on the couch with a Shiner Bock, Amanda scrolling her phone, living in a world they thought was theirs to control. I didn't hate him, but I needed them to see me, to know I wasn't the woman they'd pushed out. I thought of 19 Minkin Ave when I'd worked late to pay Amanda's college tuition. My hands sore but my heart proud. She'd hugged me then, her smile brighter than the Austin skyline. Now I was invisible to her, but not for long. I started spending more time at Zilka Park, tending a community plot with Ruth and Clara, planting wildflowers that had bloomed come spring. We'd sit on benches after, sipping iced tea from thermoses, sharing stories of love and loss. "You got a fire in you, Margaret," Clara said one day, her eyes twinkling. "Whatever hurt you, it's fuel now," I smiled, plucking a blade of grass. "Maybe so. I'm just trying to grow where I'm planted." At home, I kept my Etsy shop going, adding rose petal soaps and sage bundles, each sale a small victory. I joined a book club at the Austin Public Library, reading The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama, with women who spoke of rising after falling. One night, I shared a bit more, my voice steady. I was invisible for a long time. I said, "But I'm learning to shine, just for me." They nodded, one patting my hand, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known I'd missed, like a star glowing steady in the night. The building was moving forward, too. The manager sent reports, new paint in the lobby, fixed leaks, a mailbox system that didn't jam. I approved a rent increase, standard for East Austin's rising market, knowing it had hit Chad and Amanda hardest. I didn't single them out, didn't need to. Their life was stretched thin, and this would test them, show him what it felt like to scramble. I thought of 2000 when Amanda graduated, and I'd given her my old Honda, my hands shaken as I handed her the keys. She'd called me her hero then. Now, I was a ghost, but one with a deed in my name, a power they couldn't imagine, one evening. I sat on my balcony, the city's lights a canvas of stars below. I opened Mama's diary. Reading her words again, Margaret will never know. But I did know, and that truth was a root, holding me fast. I wasn't just Amanda's mama, not just Chad's cast-off. I was Margaret Louise, daughter of Eleanor, heir to a legacy I was just beginning to wield. I didn't know what came next, whether I'd face them, whether they'd feel the weight of their choices. But as I watched the skyline, the Colorado River glinting like a ribbon in the moonlight, I felt a peace settling in, like a garden blooming after a long Texas winter. I was healing, not all at once, but steady, my light growing brighter with every quiet step. Some battles are fought in silence, not with shouts or fists, but with the quiet strength of a star holding steady in the Texas night. I'm Margaret Louise Walker, just a woman from Austin who'd been cast out by my own daughter Amanda and her husband Chad, only to rise again with a truth from my mama's diary and a deed in my name. I'd bought the building they lived in, set the rent to climb, not out of spite, but to make 'em feel the weight of their choices. Now, I was healing, tending my heart like a garden, but the past don't stay buried forever, not when it's tied to the ones you've loved most. Sitting here with my chamomile tea, the Zilker Park lights twinkling like fireflies. I want to take y'all back to the moment I faced Amanda and Chad, not to settle scores, but to draw a line, to forgive with my eyes wide open, and to find the starlight I'd been chasing. It was early January now, the Austin air sharp with winter's edge. The live oaks along South Congress bare but strung with fairy lights that glowed like tiny stars. I'd settled into my apartment, its balcony a haven where I'd sip community coffee and watch the city wake. My days were full tending wildflowers at the Zilker Botanical Garden, selling dried bouquets on my Etsy shop. Margaret's bloom, laughing with Ruth and the gals at the library book club. I'd poured my heart into this new life, like water in a rose after a drought. But Amanda and Chad were never far from my thoughts. Their world was fraying cheap groceries at H-E-B. Chad's gripes about building repairs, and I knew the rent increase, set to hit this month, would push him to the edge. The storm broke on a Wednesday evening. The sky bruised purple, a chill settling over Austin. I was in my kitchen, tying lavender bundles, the radio playing wagon wheels soft and low, when a knock came at the door, sharp and urgent. My heart skipped, like a star pulsing in the dark. I peeked through the curtain, and there was Chad, his face tight with anger, Amanda trailing behind. Her eyes downcast, I took a breath, smoothed my blouse, and opened the door. My voice calm as the Colorado River at dawn. "What brings you all here, Chad?" Didn't waste time. His voice loud, cutting through the quiet. "You're behind this, ain't you? Margaret, the rent hike, the repairs, all of it. You think you can ruin us?" I stepped aside, letting him in, the room warm with the scent of lavender and coffee. Amanda sat on the couch, her hands clasped, while Chad paced, his boots scuffing the hardwood. I sat in my wicker chair, hands folded, waiting, the silence stretched, heavy as a summer storm. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my tone even, though my heart raced. "Don't play dumb," he snapped, stopping to glare at me. "The rent's tripled." "Margaret, tripled. We can't pay that, and you know it. Someone's targeting us, and I bet it's you." Amanda lifted her head, her voice small. "Mom, is it true? Are you doing this?" I looked at her, my girl, her eyes searching mine like they had when she was 5, scared of monsters under her bed. I thought of 1985, when I'd hold her close, whispering, "Mama's here." I'd given her everything late nights at the library, my savings for her dreams, my heart, and she'd let Chad call me a burden, let him push me out. I'd carried that hurt. And now, here they were, asking for answers I wasn't ready to give. "I own the building," I said, my voice steady as a live oak. "ML Holdings is mine. The rent's gone up. Sure, but it's market rates. I ain't targeting you. Chad, I'm just doing what's fair." His jaw dropped, his face red as a sunset. You own it." "That's a lie. You're a nobody. Margaret, living off our scraps." "How'd you enough?" I said, standing, my voice firm but not loud. "You don't get to talk to me like that. Not anymore. You called me a mouth to feed, Chad and Amanda. You stood by him. I'm not your maid, not your charity case. I'm the woman who owns the roof over your head. Amanda's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling. Mom, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't. Why didn't you tell me? I softened, but only a touch. You didn't ask, Amanda. You didn't see me. Not till it hurt you. I found something of truth from my mama that gave me a chance to stand again. I took it. Not to ruin you, but to be seen. Chad scoffed, stepping toward me. You're playing some game, trying to make us beg. Well, I won't. We'll move, find somewhere else. Go ahead, I said, meeting his eyes. But you'll carry what you did, Chad. You can't outrun that. He froze, his anger flickering like a candle in the wind. Amanda stood, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, Mom. I was scared, trying to keep peace. I didn't mean to hurt you. I looked at her, my heart aching but firm. Words ain't enough, sweet tea. You let him push me out, and I carried that alone. If you want my trust, show me with actions, not tears. She nodded, wiping her eyes, while Chad stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Amanda lingered, her shoulders slumped. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You start by seeing me, I said, my voice gentle now. Not as your mama, but as Margaret. A woman who's still here, still standing. She left. The room quiet again. The lavender scent lingering like a promise. I sat, the radio now playing Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, and felt a weight lift, not all of it, but enough to breathe easier. I'd faced him, not with rage, but with truth. And it was like planting a seed in a garden, waiting to bloom, the next day. I met Ruth at Zilka Park, our hands in the dirt, tending a bed of bluebonnets. You look different, she said, her silver curls catching the sun. Like you've found your light. I smiled, pruning a stem. Maybe I have. Ruth, took a long time. But I'm getting there. She patted my hand, her eyes warm. Keep shining. Margaret, you're a star, and don't you forget it. I kept my Etsy shop going, adding rose sachets and marigold bouquets, each order a small victory. The book club met again, and I spoke up, my voice clear. I'm learning to forgive, I said, but not by losing myself. I'm holding my light now. The women nodded, one squeezing my arm, and I felt rooted, like a live oak standing tall. The building was shifting too. The manager sent updates, new lights. A repaved lot. Tenants pleased but grumbling about the rent. Chad was loudest, leaving notes in the office, demanding to know who ML Holdings was. I told the manager to stay quiet, let the notices speak for themselves. I saw Amanda once more, at Kirby Lane Cafe, sipping coffee alone, her face pale. I didn't approach, didn't need to. She was feeling the weight, and I knew it'd lead her back to me, one way or another. I kept tending my balcony garden, watching my daisies bloom, their petals bright as stars. I thought of 1978 when I'd stand in Mama's garden, her hands guiding mine to plant roses, saying, Margaret Louise, you're stronger than you know. Then I doubted her then, but now, with a deed in my name and a life I was building, I believed her. I wasn't ready to forgive Amanda fully. Not yet, but I was ready to let her try, to see if she could grow too. The stars were aligning, and I was walking toward them, my light steady, my heart open to what came next. Some journeys don't end with a bang or a blaze, but with a quiet glow, like a star burning, steady over the Austin skyline, lighting up the path you didn't see till you walked it. I'm Margaret Louise Walker, just a woman from Austin, Texas, who'd been broken by my own daughter Amanda and her husband Chad, called a burden and cast out with nothing but 2 suitcases and a heart full of hurt. But a truth from my mama's diary, a legacy from a father I never knew, and a deed in my name gave me back my light. I'd faced 'em, drawn a line in the sand. And now I was learning to shine, not for their sake, but for mine. Sitting here with my chamomile tea. The Zilker Park lights twinkling like fireflies across the way. I want to share the end of this story, not a closing, but a beginning, where I found my starlight and let it spill over, warm and soft, like a Texas summer night. It was late January now, the Austin air turning gentle, the first whispers of spring rustling through the live oaks along South Congress, their branches still draped with fairy lights from Christmas. I'd built a life in my apartment, a cozy spot with a balcony where I'd sip community coffee and watch the city wake, its skyline a canvas of glowing dreams. My days were woven with purpose tending bluebonnets at the Zilker Botanical Garden with the Gardening Club, crafting dried bouquets for my Etsy shop. Margaret's bloom, sharing stories over braiding sweetgrass at the Austin Public Library Book Club. I'd faced Amanda and Chad, told them I owned their building, set the rent to market rates, not to crush 'em, but to make 'em see the woman they'd dimmed. Now, I was waiting, not for their ruin, but for their choice to rise or fade, to reach for me or stay lost in their own shadows. Amanda was taking steps, small but sure, like a seedling pushing through spring soil. She'd landed a job at Joe's Coffee on South Congress, pouring lattes, wiping counters, her apron smudged with espresso by day's end. It was a far cry from the marketing gigs she'd flaunted on Instagram, but it was hers, earned through sweat and time. She'd joined a financial counseling program at the community center, texting me updates with a shy pride, paid my electric bill on time. Mom, feels good. I didn't always reply, but I saved each message, like pressing wildflowers in a book, their words delicate but real. She'd moved out of the apartment she'd shared with Chad, renting a tiny studio off East 7th, a place with a single window and a mattress on the floor. One evening, she showed up at my door with a canvas, a painting of wildflowers in reds and golds, its edges rough but honest. For you. Mom, she said, her voice soft. I'm trying. I hung it above my fireplace, its colors bright as a sunrise over Barton Springs, a sign she was finding her way. Chad, though, was slipping deeper into his own storm, like a cloud blocking the stars. The property manager sent me reports. Chad's notes piled up in the office, scrawled with complaints about the new lights, the fixed elevator, the rent that climbed to match East Austin's rise in market. He'd bang on the manager's door, demanding to know who ML Holdings was, his voice echoing through the lobby like thunder. But he didn't move out, not yet. His pride kept him tethered, paying the rent with late fees, his Shiner Bock bottles traded for cheap cans from H-E-B. I heard he'd lost his sales job, taken night shifts at a warehouse off I-35, his swagger gone, his eyes hollow. I didn't wish him harm, but I felt a quiet justice, like a star holding its place in the sky, unmoved by the wind's howl. My own light was growing, steady and sure. In February, I took a bold step and rented a booth at the South Congress Art Fair, setting up my flower bouquets and herb sachets under a canopy strung with twinkle lights. The fair was a whirl of live bluegrass bands, strumming, deep in the heart of Texas, kids dancing with snow cones, the air thick with the sizzle of Torchy's tacos and the tang of lemonade. A gal from the Austin Chronicle stopped by, buying a sage bundle, her smile wide. Margaret, these smell like my granny's kitchen, she said. You've got a gift. I blushed, pinning a fair ribbon to my apron, my heart full as the Colorado River after a spring rain. Thank you, darling, I said, feeling like I'd bloomed where I'd been planted, my roots deep in the city I loved. I kept my garden club going at Zilker, planting marigolds and lavender with Ruth and Clara, our hands dusty, our laughter light. You're shining now. Margaret. Ruth said one morning, her silver curls catching the sun as we weeded a bed of wildflowers. Whatever hurt you, it's fuel for your fire. I smiled, watering a seedling. Took a long time. Ruth, but I'm here, growing where I'm at. Clara chimed in, her eyes twinkling. You're a live oak girl, strong and steady. Don't you ever forget it. Their words wrapped around me, warm as a quilt, and I carried 'em home, tending my balcony garden daisies, sage, a peach tree sapling that'd bear fruit some day. I added rose petal soaps to Margaret's bloom, each sail a small triumph, like a star flickering brighter in the night. The book club met weekly, and we dove into the light we carry, sharing thoughts on resilience and love. I spoke up, my voice clear as a bell. I've learned to hold my own light, I said, not to outshine anyone, but to light my own way. They nodded, one squeezing my hand, and I felt rooted, like a tree standing tall through a Texas storm. Amanda's steps grew steadier. She'd text about her days, burned a muffin at Joe's, oops, or dropped by with a taco from Torchy's, sitting on my balcony as we watched the city's lights come alive. One night, she opened up, her voice soft under the hum of South Congress. I was scared. Mom, of losing Chad, of not being enough. I let him make me small, and I hurt you for it. I sipped my coffee, the skyline a sea of stars below. You don't fix that by staying small. Amanda, you fix it by choosing yourself, even when it's hard. She nodded, her eyes wet but clear. I'm trying now. I want to make you proud. You always did, I said, touching her arm. But you gotta be proud of you too. She leaned into me, her head on my shoulder, and for a moment, it was like 1985 when she'd curl up with me after a bad dream. Her small voice saying, You're my best mama. We didn't talk about Chad, didn't need to. His shadow was fading, like a cloud passing over the moon. Chad's end was quiet. No drama, just a slow unraveling. The manager said he'd moved out, leaving the apartment bare, his name off the lease. Word was he'd gone to Houston, chasing a warehouse job that didn't last, his bluster spent. He sent one email, forwarded by the manager, full of empty threats. You won't break me, ML Holdings. I didn't reply. He'd broken himself, and I didn't need to watch the pieces fall. His absence left a space for Amanda to grow, and I saw it in her eyes, her steps, the way she carried herself now, like a wildflower finding the sun. By April, I was ready for a new chapter. I bought a small house in Cedar Park, a cozy 2-bedroom with a porch swing and a yard big enough for roses. I moved in on a warm day, Amanda helping with boxes, her laughter light as we unpacked Mama's bluebell plates. I remember this street, she said, sitting on the swing, her feet dangling. I rode my bike here, didn't I? You did, sweetie, I said, smiling. You were fearless then. You can be again. She looked at me, her eyes bright. I'm getting there. Mom, with you. I planted a garden bluebonnets, lavender, a peach tree that'd bear fruit someday, and watched it bloom, each petal a promise kept. I expanded Margaret's bloom, selling at the Republic Square Market, my booth a riot of color under a Texas sky. I donated half my savings to a women's shelter in Austin, naming it Eleanor House for Mama, a haven for women like me, cast out but rising. The director hugged me, tears in her eyes. You're changing lives. Margaret, I didn't need thanks. Every bouquet, every seed, reminded me who I was. Amanda kept growing, working steady at Joe's, taking art classes at the Doherty Art Center. She painted another canvas for me, a lone star over a river, its light soft but sure. We hung it in my living room, next to her wildflower piece, a pair of promises. We'd meet for coffee at Joe's or tacos at Torchy's, talking about her dreams, her fears, our past. I let Chad make me someone I'm not, she said one day, stirring her latte, the South Congress bustle humming around us. I won't do that again. You don't have to, I said, squeezing her hand. You're enough, just as you are, always were. I thought of 1978, when Mama and I'd sit in her garden, her hands guiding mine to plant roses, saying, Margaret Louise, you're stronger than you know. I'd doubted her then, but now, with a home, a garden, a daughter finding her way, I believed her. I'd loved Amanda through her silence, forgiven her with a heart that held boundaries. Let Chad fade like a storm passing over the hill country. I'd found my starlight, not in their eyes, but in my own, a glow that didn't need their permission to shine. One evening, I sat on my porch swing, the Cedar Park sky ablaze with stars, deep in the heart of Texas, drifting from a neighbor's radio. I was Margaret Louise, daughter of Eleanor, not just Amanda's mama, but a woman who'd grown through pain, who'd bloomed where she'd been planted. The past was a gentle shadow, the future a river waiting to flow. I'd built a life, not just for me, but for every woman who'd felt unseen. And I'd keep shining, steady as a star over Austin, my light a beacon for those still searching. Thank you all for walking this road with me, for holding my story like a quilt on a cool night. If it's kindled a spark in you, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button and share a moment in the comments when you found your starlight, or when you're still looking. Let's keep this porch talk going, 'cause your story matters, and I'm here, listening under these Texas stars.